at the camera. Look at the D. Look at the D.
Ability to say he is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further.
Damning non-answer, a great line from what was a pretty collegial debate overall. I mean, I think it was, part of me was kind of hating it, but part of me was kind of like, wow, what is this? Like, being so nice.
A whole discussion of like, policy.
They didn't yell at each other. I am Fred Wellman, retired Army officer, Lieutenant Colonel. My partner in crime here, Mike Lavigne, retired Sergeant Major. We are on a bus. We're on a bus. If you haven't joined us before, we're here on the VoteVets. What do we call it officially? I don't know. Not Suckers and Losers Tour. Not Suckers and Losers Tour. That's what we are. And we are chasing JD Vance and Donald Trump around the East Coast or further. We are in New York City today. We drove around town a little bit, caused a bit of ruckus, and in front of the debate stage, letting them know we're here, that veterans are not suckers and losers, as our sign says. But we want to talk to you about the debate. This is the first time two veterans have met on the debate stage. Like, I don't remember. I can't remember.
Modern age, maybe.
And you know what? We'll talk about it more. Maybe that's why it's so collegial, huh?
Yeah.
So we can talk about that a lot. We got great guests. You're going to love who we've got, some very important people, very smart people. Let's go ahead and bring in our first guest, Chuck Rocha. Has his own, he's a real good dude. He's been a friend of VoteVets for a while now. And Chuck, you joined us in the last debate. You're back again. Chuck, we did not talk in the pre-show, folks, so this is live. Chuck, what'd you think?
Well, I thought it was really interesting. I like your and Fred's point about, being collegial. I'm one of the few people in America who's actually prepped somebody for a presidential debate and a vice presidential debate. And you could tell tonight that JD Vance is smooth, with all of that fine education comes showing, and that there's a reason why we picked Tim Walz to be the Democratic nominee, is that he is every man. He is a football coach. And, I've had a lot of good football coaches in my lifetime, but, maybe being on the debate and having all those cameras in your face is a little nerve wracking. At the end of the day, did this really move the needle? No. Let me just answer that before you watch. All the pundits tonight, people are already voting. People have made up their mind. What you needed tonight is there's one job, just one job that both of these men have as a vice presidential pick, and that is do no harm. Yeah. Do no harm is the only thing. And JD Vance has been historically failing at this one job since the day that he got this one job, is that true. Do no harm. You haven't heard Walz out there doing or saying nothing stupid and all the other things, right? You can debate on how good or bad each one of them did on the debate tonight. There's a few things that stood out. It won't never matter. JD Vance is really smooth and probably did a better job at quote unquote debating. Well, there's some gotcha moments for each side. Absolutely. But Tim Walz did exactly what he needed to do tonight, which was do no harm. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to show up on election day to vote for Tim Walz and JD Vance. They're going to show up to vote for either Donald Trump or Vice President Harris. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, no question about it. And there was a couple of gotcha moments. Obviously, we opened that clip about January 6th. It seemed like Governor Walz kind of had his legs under him at that point a little bit better than he had in the early time. He seemed a little nervous, didn't he? A little anxious.
He was, and you can just tell. And I sit here and I try to do these by myself because I am the football coach who's watching another team play, know how much preparation went in. And so we talked about this last time when we laughed so much about Vice President Harris teeing up Donald Trump and him scurrying over there and taking all the bait that she was laying out for him. And you saw some of those gotcha moments tonight, and you saw that the preparation was there. I think that like most Democrats, I think Tim Walz was probably overprepared and they gave him so much stuff. Keep it simple. Stupid is the way that I like to think about debates. Know about what you're going to say, have your moments, and always defer back to, what regular folks care about. That's why I think that there was no harm, no foul. Was it a good debate? Yes. Was it a great debate? No, it was not a great debate, but it was a damn good debate. And I think that was the end of it.
I felt like it was missing some of the political rancor that we've seen over the last couple of years, right? Last two election cycles, there's just been like knockdown, drag out type of fights, both in the presidential and the vice presidential debate. And the collegial part, I had taken a note really right before the January 6th question.
Yeah.
No big zingers, and it's like, whoop, got to cross that out. That was a good one, but it was more of a sober policy discussion instead of sort of the tit for tat that we've come to expect over the last couple of cycles.
Mike, I think you're exactly right. And I think that, at a certain point, we forgot how debates used to work for president, right? When folks would go back and forth about each vision for America.
Yeah.
I think that when I talk about these things, that everybody used to be, I'll say before Donald Trump, well, I could debate with my Republican brothers and sisters. We'd both want America to succeed. And we'd want what's best for all of the people in America. We would just have two different visions of how to get there. And let's debate on whose idea is best to get to America the beautiful, get to America's the greatest, get to helping all of our men, women, children, old and young. How do we get to where everybody gets the help and everybody's doing well? We have kind of lost that under Donald Trump. And tonight we were kind of reminded of some of that, right? There's still, at the end of the day, folks have made up their mind. And we had a deeper policy discussion that I think the reporters will really like. But Fred, me and you've talked about this, is that at a presidential level, it's a little bit different than your local congressional race or mayor's race, where you need to figure out who's really serious about picking up the trash and fixing the potholes. Is in this election, it's about who you trust and who do you like, and who do you trust with the bomb? Who do you trust not to do something stupid? I don't mean to be so elementary about it, but it's really that way. And if you think about all your friends and folks in politics, that's why it's either been a vote for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump up until this election. Folks say that they voted for Joe Biden, but folks weren't super engaged or loved Joe Biden. They have a few people, but most people were voting against Donald Trump, right? So now you have a different option. You have a woman who, is a woman. She's 20 years younger. She's picked a football coach. Do you pick that team? Do you trust that team after tonight, more or less? That's yet to be seen. But one thing that I know in running 24 House races and 3 Senate races, include Ruben Gallego in Arizona, is that 98% of the people in America have already made up their mind. But this election is so close that final 2 or 3% could have a big impact.
I think one of the things I've been talking about a lot, Chuck, is I saw some great reports earlier this month that we've got the lowest undecided level in this century, right? 3 to 4% is what the polls are showing, are undecided at this point. In 2020, that was 8% at this point. And 2016, it was 10%, which is a pretty significant number, which is why we had probably a wild swing with Hillary's numbers, right? So I think you're right. There's not that many decideds to prove. What I've been saying a lot, I'd love your opinion, is, and the impact tonight on that is that this is really a turnout election at this point, that Democrats have made their minds in a large number. Republicans actually are still wavering a little. But do you think in the end that Governor Walz or J.D. Vance, it moved their power forward to actually get their coalition to get out and vote, right? I mean, we need Democrats to actually get in the fight, don't we?
We really do. And turnout, I mean, you're exactly right. And I know you and Mike have been through a lot of elections and seen lots of things. The thing that's really different about Donald Trump and about this election is Donald Trump brought a lot of new people who had never voted before in 2016. People don't like to admit this, but he brought even more new people to vote in 2020 who had never participated. Luckily for Democrats, Joe Biden motivated a lot of new people to show up to vote as well. And it was just, to your point, a tiny bit more new people for us. So what he is relying on with a lot of red meat that he throws to the base, because folks are like, why is he not pandering? Tonight, you saw J.D. Vance trying to go to the middle on everything. We're not really against abortion. We're not really for these things. Oh, this and that, because he was really going to the middle on everything that was said, where Donald Trump is always just throwing red meat out there, trying to get new people to new crazy people, to be honest, to show up who thinks that immigrants in Ohio are eating cats and dogs, for God's sakes, or shit like that. I could say shit on this podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a better show. Well, having said that, I mean, it does make me think, as I was looking at Mike here, is like, did he hurt? I mean, in a certain sense, maybe Vance could hurt them in a certain sense. They don't want center, most of their coalition. Their coalition wants bombs. Their coalition wants mass deportation. I mean, he danced around that mass deportation question, didn't he?
He did. And he danced around every significant issue that in the races where I'm working in, the polling says that it's hurting their brand. And it starts with abortion and the Dobbs decision. It starts with the way that he is demagoguing people that are legal immigrants and other things. He would move and you would watch him, because Donald Trump does not do this. Donald Trump does not waffle one little bit. Tonight, you saw J.D. Vance actually waffle on all of those things. And he was trying to give a smooth argument and trying to say something and then pivot to something else. And that was the biggest difference from a professional's perspective. No, I knew that he knows that abortion and suburban voters are really being hurt by that. That's why he also knows that veterans are moving towards Harris as well. And I think that that's why you saw in the beginning around the foreign policy stuff, all of that stuff started making sense tonight. It'll be interesting what the phone call is going to be like between Donald Trump and J.D. Vance later on tonight, when he was like, and we are for what?
Hey, Chuck, I know you're short on time, but I did just want to bring a comment I saw on Twitter to your attention. So Jerry O'Donnell said Walz didn't do well. He was too nice to the liar. And so I'm just wondering, kind of back to our earlier conversation, like, do you think the civility, we've kind of start looking at debates now as blood sport instead of the open and honest exchange of ideas and the policy comparison, rather than just the absolute, dropping bombs on each other? And is that going to, like, do you see ramifications or repercussions on that as we have elections going forward? I mean, are we ever going to go back to being able to have that open and honest conversation without it going to blows?
I think you can after Donald Trump. And I think where you'll see people critique Coach Walz on not holding him to account. Luckily for us Democrats, there's very few people in America who don't already know that Donald Trump is a liar, because he just gets talked about as a liar so much on TV. And that's who people are really voting for. So I don't think that hurt us tonight. To your point about civility, is that I think Donald Trump, and I've talked about this on TV, that I think he is a unique candidate. And when other people try to act like him, J.D. Vance, Carrie Lake, others, it just lands flat because there's just one. And I think when he's gone, I think there's a chance that we could return to civility, because I think there's just one person who really can gain and get away with what Donald Trump gets away with. And you can see it right now in Arizona. Like, Carrie Lake wants to be him so bad. She's running against a Marine, a guy who has fought, a guy who's been overseas, a guy who grew up in a single mother household, who's just a working class Joe who happens to be a Mexican from Phoenix, who was a congressman and now running for Senate. And that's the reason he's whooping her ass, is because she's trying to be Donald Trump, and Ruben Gallegos being every American Joe. Like, he works hard. He's got a kid. He's got a wife. He's just trying to do what's right. And I think that's why I think that we have some chance to get back some normalcy once Donald Trump is no longer running for office.
I agree in a lot of ways. Now, the last thing I'll let you go before I let you go is, man, he lied a lot, though. I mean, J.D. Vance, he's a smooth ass liar, right? Yeah. I mean, he lied so much. I mean, I was looking, I literally had pages and notes. I mean, I'm still amazed. I had no idea that Donald Trump saved Obamacare. That's incredible. I mean, God bless what the hell was that? I mean, it was insane, Chuck.
But that's what I mean when I'm saying it was a better performance. What people don't realize, and you noticed right away that Tim Walz doesn't realize you're going to be on split screen the entire time because he's so nervous. He's writing, right? So I thought Tim Walz was writing a book tonight, and he just kept writing because he was nervous. He wasn't really writing to be writing. He wanted to remember the lines. And maybe as a football coach and a teacher, there's many ways that we all learn or remember, because you couldn't walk out there. For those of you listening, part of the rules tonight said you couldn't go out there with anything except for that blank sheet of paper and a pencil or a pen. And so he was writing while JD was talking. Now, when I'm doing debate and debate prep, I remind my folks, instead of disagreeing, to write down what you want to respond so you don't forget when you think about what's the next thing. Because that's how, when I'm doing, let's say that I'm in a meeting with you and we're all talking, and I have, Fred, you love to talk, I love to talk. When you're talking, instead of me interrupting you, I know you, Fred. I don't want to interrupt you, because if I interrupt you, my granddaddy will come up out of the grave and get me, because that's rude. So I try to write down what I want to say back to you. So as soon as you take a breath and stop talking, I got something to say. And so that's what I was hoping he was doing. And I think he did some of it, but I think he wrote too many of it because you saw him refer to it too much. But he was doing a whole lot of writing, and it was nervous. But look, at the end of the day, we can pick all this apart. We should, and you should tonight, talk about the in-depth policies that they talked about. A lot of that doing with our veterans all across the country that are fighting to keep us free tonight, especially in the turmoil that's going on with all the rockets in the air tonight. These are real discussions about real things that we should talk about. But politically, that's my job here tonight. I'm the political consultant. I've worked with VoteVets for many, many, many years, and it's not going to move the needle. It'll be interesting to see, though, the way that the news coverage covers this. And then I'm going to pay attention when I get up in the morning of what are the first 2 or 3 memes that people use tonight that start circling around, because Tim Walz had a bad answer about the Chinese thing and about, did he go over there? You know, he should have just been like, I misspeak sometimes, I've done these things. But is that the meme, or is it the meme where JD Vance is caught, to your point, Fred, lying 15 times? Like, I want to see, because that's what worries me when it starts embedding into our social media, because nobody stayed up except for us tonight to watch all of this. But folks will be looking at their TikToks and their Twitters to see what people are saying about it.
Chuck, the meme I'm looking for is, there was about 3 or 4 times where JD was mid-lie, where the senior NCO face came on. Where I'm sure if you were a trooper in First Sergeant Waltz's battery back in the day, you might have seen that once or twice. That's the one I want to see on the memes. It's just that death face. It was great.
Well, you will know.
It's literally the face. You look over and the first sergeant standing there, and he's got like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah. Did you really just say that?
Look, you know, that was the look. Seriously, is the private really doing that? It takes them a minute to process what they're seeing. Right?
Yeah,
that was definitely senior NCO.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Chuck, man, I know you got to go because you're busy, man. We appreciate you. We got some great guests on you.
Y'all keep doing the great work. I appreciate everything VoteVets does. Y'all should be listening in tonight. And also, all these congressional and Senate races, not just Rubens around the country, where veterans are running. I always try to say this when I sign off. There's some amazing candidates out there that VoteVets are behind. They're going to make the real difference in this election. The presidential is really important, but there are amazing vets running for Congress and Senate that we're working to elect. And it's really, really, really need all of you in there donating, helping, volunteer, writing notes, and all the things. And I want to thank all of you for everything you've done so far.
Thanks, Chuck.
Right
appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Chuck.
Keep up the fight, bro. It's good seeing you. Man, it's great. Yeah, I mean, that was such a great observation because it really was. I saw it too. I'm like,
a couple of
what
times
is that face?
It made me feel some kind of way. I'm not going to lie, because you may not believe this, Fred, but I've been on the receiving end of that face a number of times.
I think I made that face actually. Mike and I served together, by the way, in the Pentagon. So we've had 2 faces. Well, let's bring our next guest. We had 2 amazing veterans and public servants at the same time. Let's bring them in. First of all, is the incredible mayor of beautiful Newport News, Virginia. My own daughter went to college there for a little while. Thanks for joining us, Mayor. Glad to have you. It's good to see that. Phil Jones, and then although he is an Naval Academy grad and a Marine, but a Marine Corps veteran. I know. Yeah, but we need some service variety.
Joint force. There
you go. And then Jimmy Anderson, who's also bringing us the Joint Force. Jimmy had the pleasure to get to know him. He was the White House Director of Veterans Outreach and Programs Engagement. He's also an Air Force veteran and a reserve officer. So we've truly brought the Joint Force finally to VoteVets. Yep. And we really appreciate you, gentlemen. You know, you saw Chuck. I think you guys hung out with him. We appreciate you hanging out with us, by the way. You saw what Chuck had to say about those. You know, we were going. I mean, I said I've got like notes and notes.
Yeah, notes.
You know, I kind of want to jump right with you. You know, Mayor, do you have a lot of federal land around Newport News that you can take? I've been down there. It's kind of on like a peninsula, right? I mean, do you have a lot of federal land to put your housing?
First, I just want to say thanks, Fred and Mike, and to VoteVets. You've been amazing. You've been a partner for a long time. So really appreciate this opportunity. Those out there, Newport News is on a peninsula. We do not have a lot of federal land. We do have the world's best shipyard, the world's best aircraft carrier submarines, but unfortunately, no, not a lot of federal land out there.
Yeah, and so you have a housing problem. I've been to your city. There's a struggle there for affordable housing in Newport News. You've got a lot of good folks who are, I think, are trying to hard. That's a very crowded area. Newport News, Virginia Beach. It's tough out there, and I mean, you could use some help with housing, couldn't you?
No, that's correct. So for those who don't know, Newport News is the 5th largest city in Virginia, but Hampton Roads is an MSA of 1.3, 1.4 million people. It's a federally subsidized area. So think about Air Force Base, you have Langley, you have Fort Eustis, you have, I think, 7 or 8 different bases all within 20 square miles. It's very, very hard to get affordable housing. We're looking at land trusts, but at the end of the day, this is local government. We would love to have a federal partner. And I think that's why it's important that we elect soon-to-be President Harris and Coach as vice president. That's what we need. We need federal help with this.
Yeah. Jimmy, bringing you in. I mean, what was your impression tonight, Jimmy? I mean, I think you were watching with a crowd, weren't you?
Yeah. So we brought together. So first, thank you, Fred, Mike. I appreciate it. Phil, it's so good to see you. Good mayor. Good mayor. I am the only Air Force, the only airman on this stage here. It's an absolute
appreciate you. And it's great. You almost served in the military.
Oh, come on.
I'm busting at you, Jimmy.
Well, that's all right. We got some airmen coming in the chat, hopefully, and they're going to
help. We will now. We will now.
So here's the deal, right? We brought together a group of 30 or so. I think we had about 40 folks who came in to the debate watch party. There are a lot of folks gathered here at the Military Influencers Conference, and we decided to bring our vets and military families as part of the coalition together to watch debate. And so I had the opportunity to talk to so many folks. And the thing that stuck out in my mind is, although I didn't go to the Air Force Academy, I am an officer, right? And I've served on active duty and in the reserve. And there is a honor code, right? We will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate others that anyone among us that does so. And we heard a lot of lies, right? We heard it on prescription drug costs. We heard it on saving the Affordable Care Act. I mean, these are almost alternate realities about what actually happened during the Trump administration, and a lot of the accomplishments from the Obama administration as well as the Biden administration. JD Vance found some way to fit that into a narrative. And so I would call on vets to first call bullshit, as well as, get out there and vote. If there is, someone in the chat said he lied so strong and so smoothly, right? I mean, we saw it on full display. I do think that Governor Walz and the good coach there, I think he was a little nervous, right? And we expected that. But I do also believe that this was a policy-rich discussion, something we hadn't seen in a long time. And I think there's a lot of things that we see as a contrast between both Walz and Vance. Walz, we saw reproductive freedom. We saw advocacy around economic opportunity for all Americans, especially those in the middle class, those who grew up in families like mine. So, and then on the Vance side, we saw, hey, a bunch of, lying, as well as talking and trying to be evasive around some of the tax breaks he's trying to give to, Donald Trump's best friends out there in Mar-a-Lago. So there are a lot of things to pull from the debate, but those are things that stick out in my mind.
So I just want to kind of switch gears just a little bit here. So this is the first debate with 2 veterans on the stage in modern history, really. I'm just wondering from both you, Mayor Jones, start off with you, what didn't you hear that you would have expected to hear with 2 veterans on the debate stage?
Well, like any good politician, I'm going to put a plug in for, I think we need to build more ships. I would love to have, no, I'm serious. I think as we look at great power conflict, as look at the future, we're going to have to understand, what are we going to do? How are we going to have power projection? I would love to have a discussion on human capital and talent management in the military. As someone who spent 6 years on active duty, I'm on year 6 in the reserves. I do worry about the future of the country when it comes to recruiting and talent retention in our pipeline. So I would have loved to have that discussion. But I think I was so proud to see 2 veterans on the stage. I think that's why we had a policy debate. We got down right to it, and I love to see that. I love to see Americans having the ability to, yes, there was a lot of lies probably thrown on one side, but the ability to come and have a debate that can hopefully move country toward more policy. However, I think in the shadow of all this was the event that's happening right now in the Middle East. Right now, we have the potential to be on a 3-front war, plus proxy wars happening right now in Africa that still continue. That's why they didn't talk about that. So I think the biggest, ships, I love ships. I love building ships. But like, what is going to happen? I just got married a few months ago. What happens? Are my kids going to be in future wars? I think that's what I wanted to hear about.
Jimmy, you were knee deep in veterans issues in your White House position. Is there something that was just glaringly obvious that you didn't hear?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you first what I did hear, and I wish that, obviously there is the backdrop of national security and what's going on right in Israel, and so I think that they let off with that, and that was kind of the extent. We saw that there's 700 national security officials who came out and said, "Hey, we are backing both Coach Walz and we are backing Vice President Harris, to ascend to the top job." And so, I think that there are things there that it kind of started off the debate, jumped right into it, and it was actually kind of awkward if folks kind of think about it. It jumped into national security, and then both Vance and Walz had to kind of reintroduce themselves, say, "Hey, this is me. I'm going to introduce myself to the country." So I thought that was a bit awkward at the outset, but understanding the backdrop, it made a little sense. I think on vets issues, right? I mean, the core thing that's facing our veterans, our service members, their families, our caregivers, our survivors, right? The administration didn't pay me to say that, by the way, is Project 2025, right? And if there's anything that would have been valuable for Coach Walz to continue to throw in there, is to talk about the massive cuts that are outlined in the cut to our healthcare benefits, our services to our veterans, our healthcare services, right, that are going to help out tons of veterans and military families, right? We didn't really hear a lot about that. I heard about the VA home loan, right? I heard about some of the things on the veterans front, but there were some things that I wish we would have talked about in the Project 2025 plan that we know hurts veterans and their families, and having Vance speak to that, and having Governor Walz call those things out, right? Call the bullshit. We know that Vance is trying to separate, both Trump and Vance are trying to separate themselves from Project 2025. And I think that it would have been good to continue to bring them in. You've got to answer why it is that someone so closely associated in the Trump circle put out a plan that can hurt veterans, right? And we didn't hear enough of that. So,
yeah, I do want to, about the VA home loan, it got that just sort of passing mention. I want to give a shout out to military.com, Steve Bainan. He acknowledged the fact that he's a veteran himself. Everyone in his age range that he knows that owns a home, it's because of the VA benefit. Yep. He said in his tweet, "I'll let campaign reporters fact check, but he's assuming Walz and Vance bought their homes with the VA alone. They both qualify. He certainly, meaning Steve, wouldn't have been able to buy one without one." Also, the GI Bill referenced a few times. Both Vance and Walz, they both used, and it's one of those key benefits. It's arguably a straight line path to the middle class, being able to use that educational.
Well, and the ironic part too is, who helped pass the new GI Bill?
Mr.
Tim
Walz.
I mean, that's the fun thing about seeing, JD Vance, brag about using the GI Bill to get his degree. You should have said, "Oh, by the way, thanks."
Thank you.
And I know you guys, both of you are younger men. You've used that, you've taken advantage of that GI Bill, or your soldiers or airmen or sailors or Marines have taken advantage of that GI Bill. Obviously Governor Walz served in the Congress at that time. We were talking about the pre-debate show, and that matters too. And I thought it was a great example to show that power. The American middle class, if you give it, often the credit goes to the original GI Bill, and this housing part of that original GI Bill, which is now even more powerful. One of the things we did talk about a lot was, and they kind of went after January 6th. I was kind of shocked when JD Vance had the audacity to say that it was a peaceful transfer of power.
Jaw dropping. Absolutely.
JJ, did we get that clip? I don't know if we got that clip of that. That was kind of a jaw dropping statement. I don't know if we have a clip of it or not. I guess the apology. But again, he literally had the audacity to say it was a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th. Unfortunately, he's ignoring what happened 3 weeks before that,
exactly.
Isn't it? Phil, were you in that? Were you in Newport News and all that went down, or were you off?
No, so I mean, I can remember watching January 6th. I was actually, COVID hit. I'm up in New York City, and I'm just watching this happen, and I can't believe that it's happening in my lifetime. I joined, so it's actually funny, and Jimmy knows this, but my mom and dad were actually Air Force Academy, class of '82. So I was here in Newport News on September 11th, right? That day changed my life. I joined the Naval Academy, the Marine Corps. I wanted to follow in their footsteps. So to have all of that rich heritage and then just watching January 6th happen, and then what broke my heart is we have 2 veterans on the stage. We're having, I think, a great debate, great policy. He refuses to say that he's going to certify the election. Like, to me, bottom line up front, there's nothing else to be said. He says he's not going to
certify. I think we got that clip. JJ, let's see that clip.
Fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
I cut you off, Mayor. I apologize, but you're right. You saw this unfold.
It was insane, and I think to go back to what the governor is saying, that it happened is beneath the office. Full stop.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And denying it and seeing it, we all saw it with our own 2 eyes. I think that's one of the frustrations. I've been talking a lot about January 6th is this memory hole and trying to memory hole it, as well as the other term. Jimmy, you came in to the administration after, I believe you came in pretty early after Trump, didn't you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was, fun fact, I was actually transitioning off of active duty on January 6th. And so, I had roughly 3 weeks left on active duty before I started my terminal leave. And I jumped right into the administration 2 weeks after the inauguration. And so there are a lot of folks who we remember this vividly. I mean, we're sitting in skiffs, for me, sitting in a skiff while we're seeing what unfolded on TV and being confused. And so for, Vance to go and say there was a peaceful transfer of power, as if we're talking about, it's almost like, like looking at the Arab Spring and saying, well, yeah, there were a peaceful transfer of power. It's like, well, no, not really in Egypt, but like, okay.
If he just considers the peaceful transition of power that they didn't riot on the day of the inauguration, then by that very narrow definition, sure. but everything leading up to that was anything but.
Yeah, and chaos. Like GAO didn't do a transition. Like you guys just showed up there in the White House. There's no transition been done, did you? You had to figure out where to find your stuff.
We jumped on, and it was the pandemic, so not many folks were traveling in from out of the state. A lot of folks didn't come into work. You know, I was starting at the Department of Veterans Affairs and then moved over to the White House, and we were all sitting here with, you know, literally career personnel coming to us saying, you know, we were sort of traumatized by that last administration, as well as what unfolded on January 6th. And so it is a certain alternate reality that Vance tried to put forth this entire debate, right? It ended with the peaceful transfer of power comment, but it started around, again, prescription drug costs, lowering prescription drug costs, healthcare, the Affordable Care Act, right? Pre-existing conditions in the Affordable Care Act, right? It somehow took credit for some of these things and created an alternate reality. And the end of that was this comment about the peaceful transfer of power. And so it's troubling. I think vets should be troubled. I think our service members and their families should be troubled by how he can sit there and create this alternate reality. Do we want a vice president that's going to do that? Do we want someone who could step into the top job and do that? Those are the types of questions that I think our communities that we interface with all the time, that the mayor interfaces with, that VoteVets interfaces with, that I interface with, should be posing. And those are the questions that folks should be thinking about.
Yep.
Okay, we're talking about very serious things. I want to lighten this up just a little bit, right? So, Governor Walz mentioned some of the high-profile Republicans who have endorsed Vice President Harris's candidacy. And what was J.D. Vance's response? He dropped a couple of names.
Oh yeah.
That I believe he referred to them as lifelong leaders in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And he said RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard.
Ooh.
Where have I been where they are lifelong leaders in the party? Did I miss that?
But there's progress. He didn't quote Orban. I mean, so he's doing better. I didn't say, well, Orban or President Z. I mean, I guess he actually named Americans, so that's progress. He knew American names. That's fucking great, I guess. It's just a clown show from start to finish. I mean, the one that almost caused us to all lose our minds here was that Donald Trump saved the ACA twice.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Mayor? Do you remember him saving the ACA twice? Because I remember here John McCain doing the thumbs down and Trump losing his effing mind and refusing to honor McCain when he died because of it. Is that more accurate, or what do you think, Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I also want to give a shout out to President Jimmy Carter on his 100th birthday. Once again, Fred, another great Naval Academy individual. I'm just throwing it out there.
He's getting it in there. He's getting it in there.
If we're just sticking it in. But
only Naval Academy grad president?
I believe so.
Oh. I think so.
Hey, give Phil Jones a couple of years though.
He's old. Yeah. But we digress.
I'm 35.
Okay.
I'm 35. I swear.
Well, we love you. You're still a baby.
We love you.
But yeah, I mean, obviously that's another untruth by J.D. Vance, and of course that's not going to happen at all, is it?
No, I mean there was a lot that was said about healthcare, and I actually think because I was watching the debate with my wife, who's a medical doctor, and I think that's where I saw Governor really shine. He got excited talking about healthcare. He was like, in Minnesota, we do this. And this is why we rank highest in here. And he does the Mayo Clinic. And you could see the passion come out. And I really think that was a turning point. I think he did an excellent job. I think he was a little bit nervous in the beginning. So talking about healthcare, you can tell he has a servant's heart. And at the end of the day, people are going to vote for their values. They're not going to vote for someone that's slick, that talks right. The coach is like an average person down the street. In the Marine Corps, we call that a good dude. He is good dudery skills, and I think that's what we saw tonight.
And Mayor, I got to tell you, you said servant's heart, right? So I would start to bag on everyone on this call, but I'm reminded that Jimmy did go into the Air Force as an enlisted guy, so You get a little bit, just a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
But the thing we have to remember about Tim Walz, he's a career non-commissioned officer.
Yeah.
And the primary role of the non-commissioned officer is to care for service members and families. And I really think he did internalize that. He carried that from the uniform into the Congress. I mean, you look at his legislative record, nearly all of the big ticket items were things that had to do mainly for service members and their families. The post 9/11 GI Bill, huge role in that. And again, what is that? That's the paved path to the middle class through education.
Yep.
Helping to strike down don't ask, don't tell. I mean, he was the ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, so you figure every major piece of legislation that came through at that time dealing with veterans, he's got a handle on. I just think that's something he's going to carry with him to the office of the vice president. And if I have the two to compare, JD Vance versus Tim Walz, I feel like Tim Walz is the one that is going to be looking out for veterans and have a voice with the president, vice, JD Vance, who's just going to do whatever Donald Trump tells him to do.
Yeah, and not matter.
Yeah, and I would say everything that I learned about being a good leader, I learned from the very first senior enlisted. My Navy chief was the one that taught me everything. And I think it's that coach mindset. It's the ability to instruct, the mentorship. So shout out to senior chief, wherever you're at. I really appreciate you.
Oh man, so many NCOs saved me. I had an NCO literally save me when I went through the tragedy of being a company commander when my first wife passed away. And it's my first sergeant who bundled me out of that room and put me on 2 feet and got me out of there. So I have great passion for my senior NCOs. I had a really good point too. It's really important too.
We kind of like you too. Don't worry.
Well,
Kind of.
I think the takeaway for me is one thing that I say a lot, and I want to tell you, Mary, because you won an election. I tell a lot of my candidates when I coach a candidate for their speeches and their speaking. Us Dems, we love to go down deep on policy. You saw that today. We love to read our policy viewpoint, right? And I've had candidate after candidate go into practice their stump speech, and it's like 12 policies. Like, that's great, but nobody's going to remember that. I always tell my candidates, look, policies are great, but people aren't going to remember necessarily what you said. They're going to remember how you feel. And I think from that perspective, now that I've got a little perspective, we've been talking for 45 minutes or so. I kind of feel like I feel good about Governor Walz. As you as a candidate yourself in the past, how do you feel? What's your feeling now at this point, an hour later?
Yeah, so I would say I've been mayor for 2 years. And when I was first starting on the campaign trail, I was getting upset because I thought I had the great website, I had the policy points, and someone brought me aside and they said, no one cares how smart you are until they first know that you actually care about them. And I think that's what I feel. People vote their values. The governor, he sounds like someone that cares. He has articulated that through his over 2 decades in the National Guard, his time in Congress where he really cared about veterans. Additionally, as governor, I mean, this second term, he has done so much, whether it's putting food in kids' bellies, the security, he's done so much. So I just look at the pattern, right? Like the pattern of what he's done, and I can only imagine what he's going to do when he's in the White House. So I'm really excited about it. I think people can clearly see his vision, President Harris's vision, and what that's going to do for our country.
Yeah, the disconnect between, I think what we saw Tim Walz, who's Tim Walz. The same Tim Walz. He's a good guy. I mean, I tweeted myself that he's so nice. I would love to be less nice, but now that we've been offline for a little while, I'm kind of glad he didn't.
Yeah. I think that again, we've gotten used to the blood sport.
Yeah.
We've gotten used to,
I'm one of those guys.
wrapping an idea around a brick and swinging it. And like they were just having an honest discussion. I mean, there was a couple of heated moments.
Yeah.
And, but you can be heated when you disagree. You can also be civil when you disagree. And I think tonight's debate was a reminder of what it used to be like once upon a time.
It's gratifying they're 2 veterans, right? I mean, I'm sure you gentlemen feel the same way, right? Look at us, all busting each other's, backs about their different services and all. that was always where we were. I was a veterans advocate. We all served at different times, different generations, of course. Well, me. I'm a different generation. But I think that camaraderie there, and I don't know if that's why they did that, but it was refreshing. I think America just saw how it could be if two decent veterans who served their country can have a conversation about that.
Like Chuck said, maybe all it's going to take is Donald Trump being removed from the scene.
Yeah.
Get him out of political life, and maybe it starts to level out. Start having regular conversations again instead of, immediately resorting to the ad hominem. You're a bad person because of what you think, not just, hey, what you think is wrong. So
you mean my Twitter feed?
You and your Twitter feed.
Jimmy, you were in a group. You're watching. At the same token, I'll flip that over. We saw Tim Walz be Tim Walz. That wasn't JD Vance. I don't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, JD Vance though wasn't genuine, right? I mean, did you guys see that, Jimmy? Where I mean, by the same token, we saw Tim Walz be Tim Walz. We saw JD Vance try to be something that's not JD Vance. I think. But is that your take too, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, as we were watching the debate, and I would pull folks aside, and I'm talking to some of the vets and military families that were there, military spouses that were there, that said, I am a registered Republican. This is the first time, and sometimes the second time, that I will vote on the Dem ticket, right? Because of what's happening on the other side. And, it does give, again, we talk about this permission structure, particularly around Walz and what he brings to the table, lifetime of service, coach, right, in the classroom, all of the things that we care about, especially on the public service front. And that gives that permission structure for a lot of folks that were there. And so we saw that on full display, albeit he was nervous, right? We know that. And then I think on the Vance side, there were things that, folks were looking, and I'll say this, and I'll give him a little bit of credit here, right? We were expecting a little bit more weird, right? We were expecting that. We didn't get it all the way. We saw it in some flashes throughout the debate. We were expecting.
Yeah.
So like that's also a thing that I thought was a little bit different than what we expected as I'm talking to some of the watchers tonight. And so, I will say this. Yes, Walz showed that his record of service to this country, both in uniform, in the classroom, on the field, are things that people can hold on to. They identify with voters, right? And then I think Vance, on the other hand, although his story touches on, many of his background is an inspiring one. I think he touched on it in glimpses, tried to sort of litter it out there, but I didn't see that. And then obviously, as someone said, character and truth matter. They just said that in the chat. And that's something that he didn't do throughout the debate.
Yeah, and people could see through the facade. I mean, it's great that he touched on that background, but then he's talking about policies that don't support those folks.
There you go.
The very things he talks about don't do any benefit for those folks at all. And that's where the rubber meets the road. One thing we say often is, one thing I thought would come up is, Vance hasn't voted in the last 45 votes in the Senate in the job he's paid to do. I mean, the guy's quit his day job completely to cover for Trump, who likes to golf more than campaign. There's a few things that were missed, but I think you're right. I mean, this is a vibes election, right? Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, Walz confirmed his vibe. I mean, honestly, I don't think it would have been his character if he had been more polished. Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean, honestly, I was a little nervous at the beginning because he had some of that deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
But I think it was to Merritt, was your point that once he started talking about healthcare, he evened out, right? So it's just about finding something you're passionate about and something you know really well to just help smooth it out. I was expecting a little bit more, perhaps, fire breathing out of JD Vance. I thought there would have been something a little bit more knife in the rib cage kind of stuff, but he actually surprised me. I mean, there were a couple of times where he almost extended an olive branch a little bit, just in that spirit of collegiality that again I did not expect to see at all in this debate.
I think he's gonna be in trouble with that.
Yeah.
Could
have gone harder.
Yeah, I think Trump probably yelled at. I mean, he's probably getting yelled at by Trump right now.
You're not a killer.
You gotta be a killer. I'm looking for a killer. I mean,
that's what his dad used to tell him. You got to be a killer.
That's kind of hard. Yeah. We're getting close to an hour here, and it's late, and people, I'd love to hear the final thoughts from you, Mayor Philip Jones. I'd love to hear your kind of larger take on all this and our conversation. And what should people be looking for?
I think at the end of it, I think people vote for the president of the United States, and I think both candidates did no harm. What I always tell people, and I am in churches, I am part of the campaign. The second gentleman came down to Newport News for Labor Day, so I'm very much involved in the campaign. And I tell everyone, it sounds a little maybe paternalistic or sophomoric, but at the end of the day, your vote is like what you want for your kids, for your grandkids. What type of world do you want to? Let's set aside that JD went to Yale Law School and he's in a slick suit and he's smiling and there's a lot of words being thrown around. What type of world do you want to live in, and what type of world do you want to live for your kids and for your grandkids? And I think for this audience, for veterans, for me, it always comes down to one, who is going to be the best for quality of life for all of the military members, their family, and I'll throw in shipbuilders because of Newport News. Additionally, it's who is going to be commander in chief, right? I'm a major in the reserves. Who is going to be commander in chief? We have a lot of things on a lot of different fronts. We have great power conflict literally over the horizon. Who do I trust to pick up that phone and make that call? That's how I vote.
That's perfect. That's great. Jimmy, your thoughts, and then thoughts from where you're hanging out tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the glaring line to me was Vance's response to the question about Trump had a concept of a plan on healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that folks should hold on to that type of line because JD Vance didn't know what to say about that, right? Because that is what when you're looking at policy and things that folks can identify with, that's going to help them out. It's going to help them get a job. That's going to help them be economically mobile. That's going to help them in their communities. I think folks should hold on to that. There are concepts of a plan. I think on one side, you have a plan. You have a plan on the economy, national security, defense, many of those things that are front and center on TV and in our lives. And then on the other side, you have concepts of a plan. And so I think that is something that was glaring to me, stuck out in my brain more than anything else. The Vance dance was there. And that's another thing that stuck out to me, the Vance dance. And then lastly, it is the folks that I talked to tonight I often try to, folks have saw this Pew poll. There's a Pew Research poll that talks about, it compared from the Hillary Clinton, 2016 time all the way to now. And they look at the veteran and military family support for the Republican Democratic side, right? And we know that there is a huge gap, right? Particularly on the Dem side and support for veterans and military family support for presidential Dem ticket. But when I talk to those watchers, most of them are either folks who, are registered Republican. Some were independents who are looking for, again, a permission structure, a reason to go to the polls and support them. I think Governor Walz did that by doing no harm and being the person that he is. And that was something that definitely sticks out to me going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. No, as Chuck said, do no harm again, and I think we saw that. And I do. The more I think about it, the more I think JD Vance actually may have hurt his coalition a little bit more than Tim Walz did nothing to our coalition.
Yeah.
We didn't lose any Democrats tonight, right? We did not lose any Democrats tonight. And so did we flip any Republicans? That wasn't the mission, I don't think, at this point, right, gentlemen? So, well, I tell you guys, I wouldn't want to keep it. It's late. I know everywhere we are, and so we appreciate you so much, Mike. Anything for the gentlemen?
No, just my last thing before we pop smoke out of here is the needle didn't move, but I'll tell you to kind of dovetail on Phil's point. I think that character counts, and having a commander in chief that is that's gonna act responsibly is especially important for him as a serving officer in the Marine Corps Reserve. It's extremely important for me as my son will ship off to serve in the U.S. Army within the next month. I feel like my time in the Army with Donald Trump as my commander-in-chief was not a good 4 years.
Glad I didn't experience that.
And I pray that my son will never have to serve with him as a commander-in-chief. He's not fit. And I think we'll, as a country, be much worse off if he becomes our commander-in-chief. And conversely, Kamala Harris, I feel confident she's ready day one. And if he had to, I think Tim Walz would be eminently capable of serving in that role. So, like, I like the Jimmy, your permission structure part too. That's like, what's it going to take to make someone say it's okay to vote for her? And that's a great point to hammer over the next couple of weeks before the election.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, we're going to let you go. We'll wrap this thing up when you go. But thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Merrick, great seeing you. I think we're going to be rolling through your town here on the bus tour.
That's right. Yep.
We're coming your direction tomorrow, I think, or the next day. So we'll hunt you down. We'll text you and make you come out and hang out with us. Jimmy, good seeing you. Let's connect soon. And thanks for all you do for America, as we did in the past, especially for our veterans community. So we appreciate you both, and we will catch you guys again soon.
Thank y'all.
Thanks all.
Well, as I mentioned, we are on the bus tour, and we are leaving New York and heading south. We'll probably announce as we go. I don't want to give away.
Yeah.
Outside. Look, you can't miss the freaking bus. Yeah. Look at that. There you go. So we got some pictures. This is what we're riding in, y'all. Very subtle, very undercover, very demure.
Yep.
It's not demure. It's not cute at all. It's very direct.
Got plenty of fist bumps and waves in New York City today. One or two one-finger salutes, but that's cool too.
Yep. Yeah, it's New York.
Par for the course. And had a great trip around the Big Apple today, and we're looking forward to seeing more of some of these battleground states. And if we can spend a little bit of time with JD Vance or Donald Trump, we're all about it.
Just remind them their own words. So the best way to follow us, you guys, is VoteVet at VoteVets. Every social media channel is at VoteVets. Go to votevets.org if you want to donate. You can also join our Mobilize organization. It's our activation group. There's 2 buttons on our website. I think we may have a slideshow of it, but you can donate. We love donations. Thank you very much. You're paying for this bus tour. Thank you very much.
Yep.
But 2, as we arrive in towns and regions, we're going to hit our email list and say, hey, look, come join us at this event. Come meet the guys. Come see the bus. Come wave a sign. Let Donald Trump know what we're all about. So if you're not already on our email list, or you haven't bought something from our store, or gotten our Mobilize, whatever they call it, please join that. It's votevets.org. We'd love to have you join us as we go around the Eastern Seaboard or wherever we end up in the meantime. Also follow us here for more shows. If you haven't subscribed, there it is right there. Take action.
Yep.
Thank you, JJ. JJ's running the show back there, guys. We really appreciate him.
Sure.
So, do take action. Do join the movement. Look, guys, we're 35 days out?
Yep.
I mean, that is short. As military members, we call that short timer. We are short timers. When you get into a month, you're really a short timer. That's when you're packing all your gear. We aren't packing anything. We are fighting more and more because you can win a battle, but until the war is won, it's not over. So I will let you go at that point. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for all the nice comments. We really appreciate you. Follow us on all the VoteVets YouTube. We'll be doing more broadcasts from the pirate ship, and we will see you on the road. In the meantime, keep in the fight. We really appreciate you.
Take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.